with liberty and justice for all.
The mission of the Burlington Community School District is inspiring and challenging students through diverse opportunities. Is there a motion for the agenda this evening?
I move we adopt the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hatteberg. Any comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is adopted. Moving to public comments, the board encourages citizens to attend its meetings. Citizens have this opportunity to comment on issues and concerns. Anyone from the public wishing to address the board, please come to the podium this evening. Seeing no one, we will move on to the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda, including payment of bills previously paid in the amount of $602,006.49 and unpaid bills in the amount of $262,779.30 and gifts in the amount of $3,502 for this board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is passed. Mr. Craddock is ill this evening. We hope that he will feel better and recover quickly, so we will hopefully table that for future meetings. I'd like to hear about that.
Absolutely.
And our student representative is not with us this evening either, so Mr. Cohen, you're up for superintendent's report.
Okay, the big news this week is my community listens training down here in Burlington. I'll be out of the loop Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday going through that training. Of course, we held our cabinet meeting. Those notes are out there for the board to look at. The weather continued to be a bit of a problem with that cold streak at the beginning of the week. I wrote an all-staff update. Mr. Johnson linked that into a document that he sent out, so everybody's able to click on that, talk about the digital days, and then also some information on Houndtown days. So if the staff hasn't looked at that yet, I encourage them to do so. I completed a lot of prep work for the community listening class. We held our meeting with Vice President Bross, or President Bross and Vice President Kindle. I attended the Great Prairie AEA Superintendent's meeting in Fairfield. The entire time was dedicated to the listening to concerns following the mishaps at Waukee Community School, which resulted in school employees actually being charged with crimes. This has to do with misappropriation of government property. The key takeaways, I did set through a couple hours of this, but the key takeaways for the board members is we must always be prepared to explain how our actions and expenditures are connected to the public purpose. And in this case, our public purpose is teaching and learning. So we always need to be prepared to justify ourselves. Good enough is not good enough, or is good enough. Lavish is not okay. And that comes from, meetings where they would go downtown Des Moines, eat in very nice restaurants, have substantial bills, those type of things. So in the future, you will be receiving bread and water at any of our meetings, and that's just the way it's going to be, because I am not losing my job over your sandwich. There must be a left-hand, right-hand oversight. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Reynolds in many ways, and this is one. When I evaluate him every year, I use the standards that are set by the IASBO. And so this is something we talk about every year. So I'm very confident that we know that there is a right-hand, left-hand balance and that we have above-board assurances on expenditures. I talked with, we went over this morning in the cabinet meeting. a whistleblower's protection. If somebody sees something wrong with Burlington Community School Districts and they report it, they have to be protected, and that cannot be held or handled in any negative way unless there was malice in their action. And I'll leave that up to the lawyers. And then just accountability actions that stem from accounting for all aspects of the stewardship of the tax dollar, which is ultimately Greg's responsibility, my responsibility, then the board, and then also the administrators under the leadership standards. We have to be aware of the policy. We have to have expectations that the policy is followed. We have to provide training that then clearly delineates a degree of responsibility. It's too bad that one school district makes a mistake and everybody in the whole state has to jump through hoops now, but it is what it is. Also at that meeting, I was able to spend some time with the chief of the Great Prairie AEA, Dr. Yalick. Interestingly, she and I spoke extensively about right sizing. Since 2015, Great Prairie AEA has lost in excess of 1,000 students. So they are going to be laying people off. They are going to be closing outreach centers, facilities. I believe in Mount Pleasant's pretty much closed, and all of this is due to declining enrollment. It's important to realize it's not just Burlington. 80% of the schools in Iowa are experiencing declining enrollment. So any grieving you may receive, or not grieving, but any concerns about not needing to right size, all they need to do is look at us, look at Great Prairie, look at Western Illinois University. Laid off 100 staff members, and that is declining student population. It's all over the place, regrettably. I did attend a meeting at the Great River Medical Center concerning medical services, and there may be some telemedicine stuff going on in our schools. They are working with a school district and a hospital in Georgia that currently does these things, and this could work for students, staff, and possibly some families, and some stuff with free and reduced lunch, and then Medicaid and Medicare services and those type of things. So very exciting, because with the degree of poverty in Burlington, there's a lot of people that don't receive the health care that they should, and hopefully we can be part of that solution. I attended to a normal flow of student, parent, staff, and community issues. It is important to note that I spent a lot of time out in the buildings because I believe in forward leadership, and by forward I mean out with the kids and the teachers, not like being ahead of everybody else. And Angie Butler's doing a great job, attending to issues in a timely manner, and very accurate, very nitpicking down to the detail. So good job from her. And then Friday, an important part of Jen and I's life, we attended Joseph's college visit. So it looks like he'll be studying construction management next year, and we are very excited to be empty nesters. He just kept a high-fiving behind his back. He said, you don't have to be that happy. Attached to your report is this article. I encourage you to read it. This was written by Mike. Hey, Liz, how do you say his last name? Burnett, the new ISEA president. Scheiße. I mean, Darwin. Sorry. Okay. He is the new ISEA president, and he was the guest columnist in the Des Moines Register this morning. And a great article on mental health and how it's just washing over Iowa and it's challenging schools. And it's everywhere. And he does a great job explaining it. And then he talks about we cannot address this by simply telling our teachers, hey, we got 5 minutes or 2 hours of PD for you. And then at the end of that 2 hours, you're going to be a specialist on mental health issues. Now with that, it's important that we realize that we're way ahead of this curve. We're sitting here, we've got YouthNet, before and after school, we've got Lori Bray, we've got social workers, we've got guidance counselors. Today we were interviewing behavioral interventionists. We are so far ahead of the assessment that was in this article that it's staggering. And my hat goes off to all the people that made that happen. And Corey, thank you for continuing to push that and moving it forward. Very exciting. You also have the document I sent out to the Senate Education Committee, the House Education Committee, and our local Green, Cahoon, and Kerr, encouraging them to not support vouchers in Iowa. Again, I believe that would be almost reverse segregation, and there's a lot of issues with it. And you can read that to understand those concerns. And I got a hold of Mrs. Wingate, the BEA president, and asked if we could get the information from this study, because it would help with those initiatives that we're doing to have that insight. So we'll see if we can get a hold of that information or not, because please read that. And I apologize for the quality of the copying. I'm not a copy master.
You can probably find it online. Thank you for
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
sharing that. Anything for Mr. Cohen? Thank you, sir. Moving on to items for discussion. First up is the Pogomiller Production Service Contract. Is that Craig?
I'll take that. This is just the annual contract that we've had with Pogomiller for the sound systems and lighting systems for graduation at Bracewell Stadium or the gymnasium if needed. So
Same company we've used.
same company we've used the last few years. So
I think they've, I think the first year was a little bumpy, but they learned a lot, and I think they did a good job in hearing aid last year. It was negative, so. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Hannaford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to the budget guarantee resolution, again with Mr. Reynolds.
yes, this is again part of our aid and levy, which we'll be certifying April 15th. Part of it includes a budget guarantee, the 101% budget guarantee. When it comes into play is for districts that have declining enrollments, which is what we've had for the last several years. So they give you a 101% budget guarantee of the previous year's regular program budget. But again, it's just kind of 1 year funding. So we will qualify for the budget guarantee again for fiscal year 20. Estimated amounts $539,453, which is down from the previous year, which was $1,050,000. So roughly half of the previous year. Again, it's basically one-time funding that we do get. Important part of this, and we'll talk more about it when we do the aid and levy, but the budget guarantee is all property tax. So, but it is a critical part of our budget. So, asking the board to approve the board resolution for the budget guarantee.
Okay.
I'd like to do a roll call vote. So.
Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Director Breck,
Yes.
Director Hatterberg,
Yes.
Director Kendall,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
and Director Vikstrom.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving to the audit review, the most interesting part of our evening.
We were all excited,
Extremely
and
critical.
anxiously waiting, so. You do have a copy of the detailed audit report in front of you for your review. So, as we just load up, so we'll just kind of talk about some of the highlights. Again, when you go through the detailed audit report that you received, this is for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018. I always like to emphasize that I think the most critical parts for the board to read is to read the first section of the audit, which is the management discussion and analysis. That's the section of the audit report that's written by the management of the district. And then I also think the footnotes themselves after the financial statements give you a lot of details into the financial statements themselves, which help to identify a little more information than you'll get from reading the numbers themselves. One thing new for the fiscal year 2018 audit compared to the previous years, this was the first year where they've implemented GASB 75. If you recall, several years ago, previous GASB required us to record our OPEB obligations, which is basically the post-employee benefits related to IPERS. So we record on our books our liability related to IPERS for the employees. So what they do at the state levels, they take and you'll see in the register and other articles, what the obligation is for IPERS. So based upon the membership, they allocate it out to the districts and other city, county employers. And so each entity has to record that liability on their books. So you'll see that, and you've seen that in the previous years. New this year is GASB 75, which requires us to also record liabilities for other post-employee benefits, and that's related to our health insurance. So since we have a number of retirees, people that do retire can stay on our health insurance plan until they're 65. So there is a recognized implicit liability for those retirees that continue to stay on our health insurance plan. And I think in 2018 we had 73 retirees that were part of our plan. So when you look at the balance sheet, you'll see that's new this year, along with the pension liability. You'll see what they call the OPEB, or other employee benefits liability, reported on our balance sheet. I always like to remind you also that when it's an extremely large number when you look at the liability for IPERS and the other employee benefits. It's not like we have to write a check. If something were to happen, we have to write a check for those obligations. That is funded through future contributions for our payroll taxes for IPERS. So it's not, while it is a liability, it's not something that we have to write a check for. It'll just be funded through future obligations. So the audit for 2018, we did get an unqualified opinion from the auditors. There are basically 3 opinions: an unqualified, qualified, or adverse opinion. We did get an unqualified opinion, which is the cleanest report that you can get from your audit. There are no adjustments made again this year to the financial statements. When you look at, this is all combined funds, our revenues for 2018 were $59,942,000, which for all funds, which is a 0.8% increase from the previous year. So our revenue's been pretty consistent from the previous year.
Could have stepped back to right there. The unqualified has always been a confusion for a lot of people in the community. When they see unqualified, they presume that there's something wrong, when this is the best we can get as far as an evaluation. But every time that unqualified comes up, I get hit with somebody say, "You're out there with an unqualified situation." They don't understand the terminology.
Unqualified, but basically what that in comparison with a qualified opinion means, they do have issues.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but like I said, in the community, I think we need to emphasize that a little more than we do.
Yep. Good point. So, combined expenditures, again, for all funds, $57,358,000, which is a 0.88% decrease. So again, our revenues and expenditures were very consistent with the previous year. Looking at the general fund balance increased to $12,795,000. While our revenues decreased by 0.4%, our expenses also decreased by 2%. Revenues then exceeded the expenditures, resulting in an increase in our fund balance of $1,388,000. It's important to note the reason for this in 2018. If you recall some of our previous discussions, we had a positive special ed balance. in fiscal year 2018 of $1,040,000. So most of that was we just couldn't find staff, was the reason for our decrease in expenditures. One also thing to footnote, even though this balance went up fairly significantly, special education is a categorical fund, and unlike most categorical funds where you can carry over, special ed doesn't work that way. So the $1,040,000 positive balance, the state does take that away. So this is what I would call just kind of a temporary increase in our fund balance related to that, because the $1,040,000 is being pulled out this year as we speak in our state revenues. So capital projects, which is our PEPL and SAVE funds, increased by $820,000. We currently sit at $5,826,000 combined between SAVE and PEPL funds. One of the things it's also important to note, they always look at, as part of the audit report, what's the future look like? So we always talk about some of the economic factors, and this is, again, you'll find this in the MDA that was written by the management. We did talk about, which is a large part of our discussions with the right sizing this year. Compared to 2013, in the 5 years, our enrollment went from 4,655 to 4,139, 516 students. And the continued enrollment projections, our actual enrollment has continued to decline at a faster rate than state projections. So our declining enrollment will continue to negatively impact our district revenues. We talk about the state aid. That's the other critical component for funding the schools. Is fiscal year 19 at 1%. At the time the audit report was done, the state had not set the supplemental state aid for 2020. As you're well aware, they now have. But just talk about, as 80% of our district's general fund is a compromise of salaries and benefits, negotiated wage adjustments along with escalated health care costs will continue to have an impact on our district expenditures. So we look at, our general fund balance, solvency ratio. You can see 2016, 17, and 18, we were just slightly below 20%. Again, 2018, our general fund unassigned balance was $11,396,000. That's a reflection, again, of our increase for 2018 tied to the positive special ed balance. So you'll see this fall, I would anticipate back down to the previous year's levels after 2019.
So over $1 million of that 2018 balance is money we're going to lose?
Yes.
To me, it's essentially not there then.
Yeah, the state aid that we get monthly is already being reduced proportionally, so this year.
And then, just because you're on this slide, in discussions I've had with you before, my recollection is that if we do not cut expenses and revenue continues to decrease like it is, in 5 years, that positive solvency ratio would be a negative solvency ratio.
It could very quickly erode within 5 years. As you look at our new money, it's negative $700,000 for next year, and continued projections will be negative, while our anticipated costs go up roughly, almost $1 million every year. So cumulatively, when the revenues don't go up and actually decline, our expenditures go up. This solvency ratio fund balance can erode to a negative level very, very quickly. So.
Greg, is there a recommended solvency ratio?
State,
aim for?
Yeah, they recommend that you stay at least around 10%. So, the district, as this shows, we are very, very healthy with our solvency ratio. So.
But it can quickly disappear.
Can quickly disappear. And the reason, they recommend you keep these fund balances are for, it's happened 3 or 4 times since I've been in it. There's been state across the board budget cuts. The last one was 10%. So, for us, that'd be, $20 or $2 million in lost revenue if another 10% budget cut came across. So you have to have enough reserves to carry those times. So. This kind of breaks down the general fund, again, kind of a history, and it kind of shows you the trends out of our revenues. You'll see how much of it's made up with local property taxes. That's continued to trend down. The tuition, the other state sources, you'll see also is trending down. And that's a direct reflection of our declining enrollments and the revenues that we receive in total. So in total, you'll see the total revenues are coming down. The split between local tax and state tax, you can see, is pretty consistent. So federal sources are mainly grants and Title I, those types of things. As you can see, we've had an increase in the grants that we've had the last couple of years. So again, and Title also has increased. So that's the reasoning for the increase in the federal sources. So the total revenues out of the total budget, you can see $50,429,000. The vast majority is general fund for instruction of the students. Also show you, again, this ties into our general fund expenditures. Salaries and benefits are the largest part by far, again, around 80% of all total expenditures. You can see the salaries are trending down a little bit. Benefits, you can see not so much. Slight reduction just because, as we mentioned, the lower salaries and expenditures last year with the reductions that we've made. And that's the measures that we've taken to place to balance our budget each year. Services, you can see that goes up a little bit. The largest part of that by far is the open enrollment tuition out. So you can see those numbers are going up each year. So, and then supplies and other expenditures. Total expenditures for fiscal year 18 were $49,245,000. The other funds, you can see the capital projects we talked about. The Save and Pepple, $5 million to $5.8 million. The management levy, $897,000 to $1.3 million in 2018. Activity funds did decline from $411 to $322. And the debt services, the funds that we have in reserve to pay are sales tax bonds. Those will be pretty consistent on a year-to-year basis. It's at $3.7 million. So. And these are just kind of showing you pictures so you can kind of see in a graphical representation the balances in those funds. The other fund we have is the School Nutrition Fund, 2016, 17, and 18. You can see 2018, we did decline our balance from 416 to 298. Again, this being the proprietary fund, this is the only one that you'll show we have to actually record the pension liability. So I footnote the portion of our balance sheet that's will also be tied into this reduction in our fund balance each year is the obligation for the IFA pension. So, then just finally at the end of the audit report, they always have recommendations. Honestly, this year the auditors did not have any real significant recommendations other than just continuing to review of our board policies to make sure that we're on our 5-year schedule to make sure all of those are reviewed in every 5 years. And since we have board members, employees that we do have some business transactions with, that we make sure that we go out and do RFPs for those procedures to make sure that everyone's given a fair chance for those business. So that's just a disclosure footnote in the audit report. So those were the only recommendations that they had this year. So with that, I'd entertain any questions.
Can you go back to the general fund expenses page before we get any further with this? Okay, so I'm not exactly sure how to put this, but I will want people to notice and point out that from 2016 to 2018, the district's expenditures for benefits, the drop was negligible.
Yeah,
and it was in that time that the Chapter 20 issue came up, and everybody was worried about a whole bunch of stuff regarding that, myself included, on a personal note. But this board, and in particular you, Greg, should deserve a lot of credit for doing a lot of work to protect the benefits and getting good insurance renewals and really beating the pavement. And I hope people will realize that, because that's not something, as we look at declining revenues, it's an area that could be looked at. But this board, the people at this table, And Mr. Cohen, all the way down, and worked really hard to protect benefits, and I'm proud of that. I think people need to realize that. We haven't gone after that. So I hope that's something people realize. Any other comments for Greg?
I briefly have one. In my 5 years, or as board president, I guess you weren't here for all 5 of those, but in many of my years as board president, and then this past year, President Bross and Vice President Kindle were both busy, I believe, when the auditors left, and they requested to meet with the board members, so I came and spoke with the auditors. I would just like to point out, they speak very highly of you, Greg, because you have everything organized, you have everything precise. You do a wonderful job, and I don't know that everyone knows the wonderful asset that we do have in you. It is very nice to come into a meeting and have them be, I ask questions, they give comments, but our district is lucky to have someone who is so painstakingly organized for them. So thank you, because you do a wonderful job.
Thank you for the very kind comments.
Could you speak a little bit more about the Student Activity Fund? What is that fund used for? And there's a pretty large decrease in it.
Yes, those supplement, basically it's a separate fund that's generated through either clubs. Most of it's sports-related activities. So, the gate receipts, the fundraisers that they do, the different clubs that we have are all maintained in a different fund, the activity fund. And those are to support basically the extracurricular activities. Unfortunately, it was a learning experience for 2018. We did have a significant decline related to a music trip. We prepaid for a lot of expenditures. Then we had a handful of students decide to back out. All those expenditures were already paid for. So most of that decline was tied to a music trip that we've learned from and will do differently going forward. So.
Yeah, and that mistake's already taken care of. Won't happen again. Yep. And it is important that we do send the kids on that trip.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, good question. So.
Yep. One thing I will mention, when you brought up Chapter 20, can't bargain insurance anymore. Greg's worked with Becker and Associates. Becker's and Associates has agreed to meet separately with Nicole Wingate and the new Uniserv director out of Ottumwa. I don't know if that meeting's happened or not, but then that allows our insurance people to be transparent and then clearly show the efforts that Greg has put in to keep the premiums down and keep the money going into their bank account and not into their insurance, and not lowering their insurance services.
Good point. If there are no other questions, or is there a motion to accept?
I move we accept and file the audit.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Is there a second? Second from Ms. Hannaford. Any additional comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Audit is accepted. Thank you again, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you.
Next item is the Iowa Children's Museum Summer Ladders AmeriCorps Program Agreement.
I'll take that one again. So.
Very good.
This is a grant that Cassie Gerst.
Got another family member.
Cassie Gerst.
Mr. Reese, you need this?
He will.
Okay, sorry.
So, and it's tied to, and it's an extension of the AmeriCorps program. It's through it's a partnership with the Iowa Children's Museum, what they call their Summer Ladders program. So, what this will do, this will provide 2 staff members through the summer, from June 3rd through August 16th, that they will assist us with all of our summer schools, the elementary summer school, middle school summer school, and the high school summer school program. And they will also assist us with our freshman boot camp. So they will actually come in and write lessons plans for all the summer school, and then work to implement the success for all the students for the grade levels through these programs. So there is a slight cost to this. Each of the 2 staff members will work 300 hours. There is a cost of $1,000, you'll see, I lost the number here, $1,481 for each of the two members. But in essence, this will assist us with help subsidizing some of the summer school programs, since they'll be working them, in theory, we should be able to reduce some of our staff requirements also for the summer school. So when you look at the cost, for 300 hours, for each member, the $1,481 equates to about $4.93 per hour. So it's pretty cheap labor. They will partner as part of this also. The students do get to go to the Iowa Children's Museum. Those costs are included in the fee that we will pay also. So.
And I'll just throw it out there, Cassie has brought in excess of $1 million so far with her while we brought her on board. So when you see her, congratulate her, because she's bringing it to Burlington, and that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Just skimming through this, it seems as though there are more things you can't do than you can do in this agreement.
It's kind of like home rule in the Iowa law.
Evidently.
You can only do it if it says you can do it.
Is there a
My father
motion?
used to say, I can't make you do anything, but I can certainly make you wish you had.
I used that on Joseph last time.
I
Needed
move
to.
we approve the Iowa Children's Museum Summer Ladders AmeriCorps program agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Breck. Is there a second?
Second.
Multiple seconds. Pick one, Craig. Any additional comments or
I
questions?
already gave Deb Hedberg, so Old Milker is the second.
Very good. All in favor, say, oh, sorry,
I
go
just have a
ahead.
quick question.
Yes.
So basically, we're just doing this to enhance our summer program. It's an opportunity, and that's why we're doing it, basically?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And who will really be, like, the overall in charge? Will it be the staff from the school, or will it be these two folks?
To the
or-
administrators.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Good questions. Good questions.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. And with Mr. Bross amongst us, I will hand the meeting over to you, sir. We are
Ready
on-
for branding information?
We are on the branding, yes.
All right. Let's go for it.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you again. So, Mr. Craddock was ill today, so he won't be here. But I do want to talk about branding a little bit. It kind of started this summer when there was a presenter at SII. His name was Joseph Sanfilippo. He's a superintendent over in Wisconsin, and he wrote a book about branding and how that can help control the message of your district. And that was resonating with what we talked about earlier this year about controlling our message and selling our district to people outside of our district, trying to get them to come in, or people that think of leaving, keep them from leaving. How does this work? Turn it on. Okay. When you look at that image, is there any question what any of those companies are? It's funny that Golden M, my 4-year-old at home knows McDonald's. It's a simple image. Golden arches, kids learn that when they're 2 or 3. The blue bell, I think I'm a little too young for that, but I think it's bells or something. Phones. I don't know, something about cords connected to the walls. I don't know. But those are very powerful images, and there's so much information that you think of when you see that one little image. You see the Mercedes-Benz image, and you think of 100 years of history and all the supercars they have and all the cutting-edge technology they have. Same thing with Nike. So we all have a story to tell, and instead of allowing others to tell the story based on secondhand information or misperceptions, we need to devote time to this important aspect of our professions, creating a brand and telling a story. Our stories. So that came from the book, The Power of Branding, Telling Your School Story, and that was written by that superintendent that we saw in SAI, Joseph Sanfilippo and Tony Sinancis. So I want to go through a couple examples of schools in Iowa who have gone through the rebranding process. So this is Okoboji, and I think you'll notice right away it looks very much like Oregon. Okoboji, the residents in Okoboji were very attached to that O and were very hesitant to change their brand, but Oregon forced their hand, told them you have to within the next year. Sent them some legal documents, you have to change it. So Okoboji went through the process. They were able to keep their O but make it theirs. So up in the top left, that's called a master mark. So that was the first image that was designed for Okoboji. And then from that came all of these sub-marks. That one in the bottom right, there's a laser here somewhere pointing in the bottom right. I just thought that was really neat. Proud to be one of the pioneers. So they were able to take that idea, that font, and make different iterations and put it on things all over their building in their district. So here's another example, Charles City. I witnessed their branding information when I was looking for admin jobs. So before I was able to interview here and get this job, thank you by the way, I interviewed in Charles City. So looking through their website, I found their branding information. So these two images were not on their website anymore. On the left, they used to call that the flaming meatball, but they're the comets. So if you notice, like even those two images that they used all over their buildings aren't consistent. The oranges aren't consistent. The comet isn't consistent. It's just kind of a mess of a look. So then they got rebranded, and now it's a very unique and clean look, and everything that they have stems from that master mark that was created. So all of their official apparel is trademarked. There's comments or variations of that font and that imagery all across their school district. And in their branding guide, it even tells you what orange to use and how to get it in different programming languages. So if you're using like Word documents, it's the RBG, I think. So it goes and tells you what colors to use. So you get their orange. It's not just a guess of this is Charles City orange. It's here's our orange, use it or don't use our trademark. And then the final example I have is West Des Moines Valley. They are the Tigers, the Valley Tigers, and they're using mostly clip art of tigers that they could find. Like that's what they would put on stuff, is just pre-made tigers. And then they were also using the VT from Virginia Tech and the Clemson paw print. I don't remember if they were paying for them or not, but they're not theirs, clearly. And they went through the branding process. It's about the same time that Waukee was being sued, so that's what triggered this. Like, hey, maybe we should get our own. So they created the Valley Master Mark, and they used a lot of painstaking like meetings with people in the community to really create what their tiger should look like. They didn't want it too aggressive, but they didn't want it too childish. Whereas that medium has that V in the head with the stripe. So that image now is all across West Des Moines. What I really like about the Valley is that Hillside Elementary. So they created sub-marks for each of the school buildings too, and that's all based on that master mark. And then here's where we are. So we got 3 different hounds that, like dog images, which have been used across the district. The district uses a bridge, which isn't the greyhounds. There's a whole bunch of different paw prints, at least in the high school. There's different purples. The B is from the baseball team. You might recognize that from the Boston Red Sox, just different colors. And then on top of that is the district vehicles. I know I've talked to a lot of people who said they've waved thinking it was one of our mechanics, but then it's someone from the city in one of their city trucks. The vehicles look very similar with the bridge on it. So while Mr. Kane and I and Mr. Craddock were building this presentation, we just Googled, and these are the top 3 things, and it's about Oregon. Not a fan of the Okoboji O, and Waukee was getting in trouble for the W. So it's in Iowa. Universities and colleges, trying to protect their brand, and with the internet now, the brand is reaching across the world. which brings us to our speed hound. It might look very similar to the University of Indianapolis.
Very similar.
Very similar, yeah.
The color's slightly different.
Slightly different. I'm just saying it. You can throw me out if you want. It's fine. So, from their website, so I took that text from their website, and it's what's a trademark, and what in University of Indianapolis is trademarks. So the hounds, their logo, it's all trademarked. As far as I know, they haven't reached out to us, so it's not a big deal. I don't know if they're watching right now, but it's the same. It's very similar. So, is it time to rebrand?
Reed would assume that we've done it already.
What's that?
Reed would assume we've already branded. We need to start.
Can you take the R-E off? Is it time to brand? That's a great point. So, we're in the middle of the right sizing process. We're going from neighborhood schools to community schools now. We are changing athletic conferences. We're getting out of the MAC, going to the Southeast Conference. Mr. Cohen started this a couple years ago when all the buildings became Greyhounds. So there's not the Jets or I don't even know what everything else was. The Wolves. This was before my time. So everyone's Greyhounds now. So now we're just thinking of maybe a common image and a look. We're trying to control our narrative. It's the same or similar logo to Indianapolis University. Hashtag Raising Greyhounds, Ground Nation, that's our narrative. So, this is just for informational, but here are 3 options that we could see happening. We could put in an RFP to get an outside entity to lead the branding process. So, the pros, it would be cohesive, done professionally by someone who knows what they're doing. They have tried and perfected processes on working with school districts, so it's not the first time that they've ever done it. The professional designs, they would know how to do the trademarking process, again, because they've been through it before. Once we do have a trademark for our logo and our images, then we can start getting money back from those trademarks. So that would generate revenue directly to the school district, and really, for the people in this room, that's going to be part of our legacy. What we're leaving when we're done with service. This is something that you can point to 50 years from now, or 10 years from now, or whatever. This is something that we put through. The cons, it would cost for someone to do it professionally. And then depending on how that process worked, there could be potentially less community ownership. But I know different design companies do things differently. So there could be a very hands-off company that would do it, just hand it to us. Or we could find a company that has focus groups and brings in parents and school board members and teachers and take all this input like Valley did and create it in unison with us. So those are some pros and cons of getting an RFP. We could form a committee and design it in-house. It would have only our input, from the community. It would be less cost. There would potentially be more community involvement, but there could be issues with trademarking, grabbing the University of Indianapolis's logo and making it purple. That's not what we're looking for. Untried processes and procedures for design. So if we did it in-house, we would be recreating a wheel that we're not experts at. And then potentially, and this is kind of what I would see happening, is you would need someone to take the lead and become a local mediator, because there would be multiple opinions, and you have to figure out the best way to sort through those opinions and then not hurt feelings, because we want to bring the community together and not force it apart. An RFP in a professional company has done that before. They don't have a dog in the fight, but anyone in the community here would. So that's the con that we saw happening. Or we could do nothing. It's free. There's nothing, no imagery, nothing that we'd have to update across the school district. But the cons, there'd be no recourse for outside entities using the BCS brand, BCSD. I know that there were some folders that were sold a couple years ago that had BCSD stuff on it, and another company got the money for it. They had advertisements on it, and we had no recourse to nothing was trademarked. So they're using our image, and they just sold a bunch of advertisement for us. And just recently, Zach Shea was saying that, I forgot what local restaurant, some local restaurant called and clarified, like, hey, are you doing this advertising thing? Because they had paid $160 or whatever it was, and Zach said, no, that's not us. And then, like, they wanted to be paid back, but we had nothing to do with it. Someone was doing it in our name. So, again, we want to control our brand, our name. So fraudulent fundraising could be a con, a potential trademark infringement, like with the hound we have right now. I think you'll notice from that, our current reality right now, it's fragmented identity and brand. Tim Craddock was going to wear a certain hound, then I was going to wear another hound, and we're going to show, like, look at these different dogs that we got. And then that leads, finally, that's a lack of brand recognition when we have all these different images trying to represent, us as a school district. Yes.
Question, and it might be more for Greg. What fund could we pay for a professional to do this that wouldn't be the general fund?
So we talked about that.
Good, because that's what.
Because we knew that would come up.
You know us well.
I was telling Corey after that budget talk, I didn't know if I wanted to talk at all. So I think we could go the activity fund, because a lot of it would be used for sports. Or I know Purple and Gray has been really good at donating money and paying for district needs. How they updated Bracewell Stadium, it's beautiful now, but now it's done. So now what? And this would be a drop in the bucket compared to what they paid for Bracewell.
Most likely, we looked to Purple and Gray for support, but it's similar to when we had one of the companies that does the branding, is the same company that did all the windows in all the buildings, but it's most likely going to be a general fund expenditure, so we wouldn't know the cost till we got it.
And another concern that we had was, if we get this new logo, well, then it's going to be really expensive to change all the hounds across the district. And I don't think that would be the case. I think it would be as we update, as we finish the basketball floor, whenever that is, then we would put the new symbols on it. When the football field goes out in 10 or 15 years, then we would replace that hound. It wouldn't be a right away thing, but once we get our brand, then we can start putting it on shirts and banners and get it out there.
What would be the harm with involving the community in a contest to come up with a brand? You would get community involvement with it, put a time frame on it, that if it doesn't work, you can always go the other route. But if you want to get the community behind it, you get them coming up with the logo that we would use.
That would be fun. It would be nice to get the community's input on.
But you don't wait forever to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So we'd have to put a timeline on it, like you said. Like going back to the Valley and the Charles City, was how they had the vision of coming up with those sub marks. How one big mark. Award's the vision to pull off all the other pieces.
Yeah, these would be the people who be directly involved with that, being stuck with it or awarded with it, whatever. I don't know what you'd come up with as a prize for doing that, but make it worthwhile for somebody. And it may be some grade school kids that would come up with something. We've got a lot of creative kids in art. If you've seen some of the art projects that people have had, and I don't think they've ever considered trying to create a logo for our institution.
It's an interesting idea.
Go ahead. Go.
So this is really an exciting and an interesting thing to me.
Yeah.
And I think you had invited me to be part of a conference call. I couldn't make it, and I appreciated that. So continuity, unity, singular image, I think is a great idea, especially when you look at the diversity that's up there. I'm a little concerned because we just opened a couple of middle schools less than 10 years ago. We did a community thing at that time. That's how we came up with Wolves. That's how we came up with Jets. The community was excited. Kids were excited. And while that was a great idea at the time, I still think, we're all greyhounds, and that ultimately is, what we need to be. I'm all for doing this, but I'm concerned a little bit that it will hinder access to our logo and to our materials. Our local screen printing operation, I would want them to be able to have access so they could do things for fundraisers. The track, the swim team, the football, everybody could still have, go through them to get things without, and I wouldn't want to cause a lot of grief for that, or any business that wanted to do it, to have access to it. I'm thinking about back to school time, when you walk into the discount stores and there's a rack of 6 area schools with clothing, sweatshirts, merchandise, bookmarks, I would want that to still be accessible, and I would hate to get in a situation where there's 5 schools and ours is not there for people to look at. So I think it's great, but I'm cautious about the accessibility and making sure that it's still there, people can see it, and, I'm not too hung up, as speaking for myself as a board member, I'm not too hung up on a royalty from it. I like the idea of the uniform message, but we're not Nike. If we get a penny or a dollar or whatever, it's not going to make a big deal to me.
Well, I think those are excellent points, and the master mark allows us to keep the rights, and if we choose to give it away for free, then we give it away for free. But it's a master mark, and I think under the trademark rules, we want to have the rights.
We decide who can
And
use it,
we
and we
decide
decide what they
exactly,
charge.
but we have consistency.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I'll be honest with you, Marla's hit my concern right on the head. General fund, I want a teacher in the classroom if we have to choose. So I'm saying, let's get some of the sports teams, because initially, they're probably going to be the ones that get the most
Probably.
out of this, So let's get some of these extra groups, if that's something we want to do. And also, I think we need some kind of a ballpark figure. We have no clue what we're even talking about.
Yeah.
I also think it's important, if I'm mistaken, Mr. Reese, please tell me we don't, and speaking for high school staff, but staff throughout the district, don't they sometimes send postcards home, letters, home, mail things, and those things could then also have the unified,
Absolutely.
we
send good
a
notes
30-year
all the
teacher
time.
might have something that looks, I had to laugh with the Greyhound spelled out Burlington, that's going to go back to my time.
Yeah.
So, they might have some of that still in their drawer or whatever, and this gets us a more unified, for everybody. And obviously, sports
Yeah,
will
no,
benefit the
and
most,
I agree
but I
with
think
that.
everybody will win in this.
But I'm just saying that as far as the fundraiser, or a group that's going to be able to maybe push us forward, it's not going to be,
No,
the
I echo
academic.
your concern. If
Yeah.
it's a teacher or this, there's no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, but it doesn't keep us from looking into how much it would cost and looking into sponsorships and people who would be interested in helping.
And the only thing I'd caution the board about is, in Iowa code, you cannot encumber a future board. So you can put all the work into this you want, somebody else comes in, wants the traditional Greyhound in the middle, it's the traditional Greyhound in the middle. So it sounds good that we're going to make everybody do this, but no one in this room has authority to make that happen in the future.
That is a very good point.
But I don't think the expenditure is very big. But at the same time, to your point, money forward to teachers.
If it's
So
a
we
few
talked-
$1,000s to do a trademark and some graphic stuff, at the end, that's it. We get it, we decide what we're going to do with it after that. If it's way more than that, I'm thinking,
So,
These images, professional images, are very impressive.
oh, yeah.
And
So I didn't add-
checking what we have now, I'm concerned, you mentioned the folders or whatever, this company came in and the.
So we have them at the high school if you want some.
I'm very concerned about somebody doing something with the current image that's not something we approve of, and all we can say is, we didn't
Please
approve
don't
of
do
it.
that.
That doesn't give me a lot of comfort.
If we had this, then we could say, see, this is ours. If we did this,
Yes.
this is what it would
Yes,
have looked
that's-
like.
yeah.
bingo.
That's a good point.
Whether we go after them or not, I don't think we're
Yeah,
going
we're not
to, we don't
gonna
have
They
a
have
legal
something,
team for that.
this is it, not what they did.
Right.
And right now, we don't have that, we just have,
Right, so that's something you could put in your school handbooks, everybody knows what our standards are, and going forward, if it doesn't look like that, it wasn't from us.
In Charles City, they have that user guide on their website, so it's really easy to find, easy to use. They have a set font with all their district, all their communication is franchise font, and then
Sure.
it told you how to find it if you use Word or Google Docs.
Yeah.
It was very precise.
I think the marketing thing is a bigger thing than we realize. My office frequently gets called, I won't say frequently. My office has on several occasions in the last few years gotten calls from people purporting to be with Burlington Community School District. So when I am available, I will answer the phone and find out who they're with. So I think that is a concern that we need to make sure that we're not, for our businesses and for our communities. And I mean, the idea of a contest, I think, is something that could be worked in as part of it. But I also think for trademarking and to make sure we're not violating anyone else's trademark, we probably, if we're going to do it, we would need some sort of professional assistance. So I'm interested in exploring the possibility to see the cost, and then looking at our options for funding the cost and proceeding forward from there.
Sure. So the company that I got these images from, it was the same company. It was the one that I told you about, Mr. Kendall, that phone call. So they just told me about how it works, because I didn't know anything about it. So these were 3 schools that they did. And it's from their presentation, and they asked me not to, since we're doing an RFP. They didn't want me to say the price. I will say it's a fraction of a teacher. Like it's not a lot.
So maybe an RFP could include what we want to get out of it, that we want community involvement. You know, we just need something. We need to know. It's nothing we can act on tonight, but we just need to know what it's going to cost. And I can't see how we would do it without some community involvement here. I mean,
Sure.
People like purple and gray and greyhounds.
Sure.
So, and a bee.
And like I said,
whatever it takes.
Like I said, I know this company for sure, and again, they had trade secrets that I wasn't supposed to say publicly, but they had community involvement.
Good.
So that was part of their process.
Yeah. Hey, Lacey, have you had an opportunity yet to meet with the PR person down at Greater Burlington?
I have not. We'll be meeting with them probably the last week in March.
Okay, and you've got that set?
Yes.
At that time, you could ask them where they do theirs, or if they do it on, themselves, type of thing.
Gotcha.
Because I know, don't they have, Greater Burlington has, right, yeah,
That would be a good resource to look into. Absolutely.
yeah. We've already got those meetings set up, we've already got stuff going, yeah.
And I'm aware of alumni from Burlington that are interested in this whole thing, and so they would donate a lot of their time, and they have a lot of marketing skills that would be helpful. I just had an email the other day from it, so.
Yep, and to that point, one of the most nerve-wracking things I've done thus far as superintendent of Burlington was stand before Mr. Stone, the Rocket Man, and tell him we're not the Rockets anymore. We're all Greyhounds. And I unwrapped, reached in the bag, and I took out a purple and gray shirt that said the Greyhounds on it, and I was explaining to him why they're not the Rockets anymore, and he almost teared up. He took the shirt and he rubbed it with his fingers. He said, the purple and gray, the Hounds. And I was off the hook.
yeah.
He put you on his rocks.
He did not.
Which logo was that? Was that
He remembers the old one, the gray in the middle.
the gray in the middle?
Right. But he literally lit up
That's cool.
at the purple and gray and the Hound.
Yeah.
And he had no problem with there being, he thought they should be Greyhounds and not Rockets. So.
So
I'd
that's
like to see it
what
move
Mr.
forward.
Craddock and I thought too.
I'd like to see this move forward.
We'd like more information.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I understand, get some RFPs so we know like some price ranges and some proposals?
That wouldn't hurt, but then don't move forward until Lacey gets to bounce what she finds off of you.
Okay. Now, I don't understand that process, so Greg, you might have
Greg
to
will
help me.
help you.
Got it. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Exciting.
So you go to Burlington have
We need to grab us damn
That's the 80s.
Right, next item is our board meeting start time discussion. I think at our last meeting, which we moved up because of the Pops concert, there was some discussion around the table about, wow, this really looks great at 5 o'clock. And Mr. Kendall and I met with Mr. Cohen last, was it Wednesday? I suggested maybe we ought to get that item on the board agenda. If we're gonna actually do any kind of changes like that, we ought to debate it, talk about it. And so I guess at this point, Mr. Cohen, you want to talk about maybe what you found? I asked you to look into what impacts that might have.
Yep, absolutely. After the meeting, we moved to 5 so we could go to the Pops concert. Almost unanimously, board members said, hey, you know what, it was kind of nice meeting at 5. My problem with meeting at 5 is I believe that you meet once a year and you set the time and place of the board meetings, but we do have the authority to change it. I don't necessarily like it, because when we tell people at our organization meeting this is what it is, but if the board takes action and changes it, I'm good with that. My suggestion would be 5:30 for the people that go to work at 9 and get off at 5. The people that go to work at 6 or 7 or 8, would still be able to make it, and that way we're being accommodating to our public and not eliminating people simply by the fact that they don't get off work until 7. And for those listening that may be getting mad, I know my mom worked a swing shift. Some days she went to work at 3 and didn't get off till 11, and some days she went to work at 11 and didn't get off till 7. So no matter what, she would have missed a third of all board meetings. But I think 5:30 is a good and reasonable suggestion.
And we will continue to have the meetings on YouTube now so that people can watch them at their leisure.
That's correct. They can log on, they can watch them before, after work, during work, as long as they don't get caught by their boss, and those type of things. So,
Do you have a sense, we're not deciding anything here, we're going to maybe come out with a suggestion. We'll have time for feedback between tonight and a future meeting when we would potentially take action. I think we can be flexible on board meeting times and locations, but that's just my perspective, because if we need to meet in the school, we can do that. But do you have any preliminary indication from staff or administrators that you talk to that 5:30 would be make it easier or more difficult for them to attend? If we don't get an abundance of administrators at our meetings, would it make it better for them or worse for them, or you don't have a feeling one way or the other?
well, if you start thinking about the phases that your children go through as they grow up, you get their little kid phase, where they're in little kid soccer, little kid events. It's usually on Saturdays. Practices are once or twice a week. Then they get into middle school, and then in middle school their games start at 4:30. And then they have an A, B, and C game. Then they get into high school, and they're on the JV schedule, then on the varsity schedule, and then they're gone. So for people with children in our school system, it's a
Nothing's going to be perfect.
nothing's going to be perfect.
If we're going to change times, how about changing locations every now and then to get at people?
You know where I am on that.
Yeah. Well, with YouTube, you can be anywhere in the world and be at the board meeting. It's much better than the
But I know
local.
there's people that would like to be there
To watch it.
personally and don't because it's here as opposed to someplace else.
They can be there to watch it. They could be watching it, but they can't provide public comment.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say to that is, remember, we were going to move it because we were going to completely pack the auditorium, and there were 5 people. You know what I mean? So the people have spoken through their action, during the right sizing when it was very emotional. A lot of people are uptight. They still didn't show up. So I'm not sure if having it somewhere else would make a difference, but I'm more than game to try it if that's what the
I
board
would
instructs
certainly
me
like
to
to try it.
I would like to see perhaps that when we're setting the schedule for next year, you could say every quarter, or hit every school and have that set already planned out much in advance so folks would know.
Right.
Greg, can I ask you, is the reorganizational meeting this year, will that not be till November after the election? So we are, if we don't do any, we essentially, if we wanted to do something in the next meeting, we're roughly halfway through our year instead of being almost all the way through when it's August. So I was going to suggest waiting, but if it's not till November, maybe we should be moving to make a decision in the next meeting or two.
So rather than make a motion, what do we do? Make a proposal and see what kind of public input we
Well, you can
receive?
instruct Mr. Reynolds and I to give people opportunities to give feedback and see what we get.
I would request not before 5:30 because there's no way I can make 5 o'clock meetings.
Right.
And a lot of people are probably similar to me. They have obligations that keep them at their job to 5. And by the time you get out of there and get here, it's going to be at least 5:30.
Right.
And I'm a little concerned about moving it up, that we could fall into a tendency to have longer meetings. God forbid we have longer meetings.
Well, we place that squarely on the board president.
I know. So I don't want that to happen.
Well, maybe, I don't care either way. I don't have those restrictions like you guys do with work. But maybe we ought to just kind of talk about things, get some community feedback, that sort of thing, and maybe not really do anything until next year. I mean,
I would rather we get some feedback and revisit it sooner than that.
Yeah. I really don't care either way, but I do think it's legitimate that the people that want to come and speak ought to have that opportunity. We need to make ourselves available.
So does that seem reasonable then, Pat, if you...
Absolutely.
And would we say the 5:30 and see what type of feedback you get back?
Should we say 5:30 and maybe throw out 6 or leave it the way it is? Or just 5:30?
3 options.
5:30 or now? I mean, should we go with 2 options or 3?
One thing the board needs to be keenly aware of is that Corey Johnson's the master of Google surveys.
He is.
Yep. He can come up with graphs, charts, and all kinds of stuff.
So put a 5:30 and a
Yep.
6 and a leave.
We'll have data for
We should poll the staff for sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Or would we make it available to any of the community via
We would.
Facebook or website?
Yep.
Too? I think we should.
I do too.
Not just staff, but I would like to make it so staff can get here more than me.
What does city council do? Because I know city council had a work session today at 4:30.
Their normal meetings are 6, I think, aren't they?
No, they're 5, I thought was their
No,
normal
our work
time.
session today was
Sometimes they
4:30
go
is a work
4:30
session,
when
but
they,
the regular meetings
And
start.
are they on the same
5.
Mondays we are?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have.
They get paid too.
You want to make that motion?
And is that their start times, 5 and 4:30?
Yeah, 4:34.
5 for their meeting.
So we'll gather some information and maybe throw it on an April board meeting agenda item for further discussion.
It's reasonable.
And I can put it on as an action item, and then if we table it, we table it. If we don't,
Absolutely.
we're ready, we move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think 2 weeks is enough. We meet 2 weeks from today, and I don't think that's
Right.
enough time.
Yeah, I'd say one of the April board meetings, yeah. Okay, anything else on that item anybody wants to say? Let's move on then. I guess we'll go through board communications. Are we still looking at a brief exempt meeting? Yes, okay. So,
Well, I had the privilege of going to Aldo and viewing the 8th grade projects for the National History Day. And I know that Ed Stone just did theirs Friday. I reached out to both of those teachers, and I know that some of the students and projects are going to, I believe it's the Tumwa in 3 weeks for a regional competition. And at Aldo, they have 13 projects. And then at Ed Stone, I don't know how many projects, but they're going to have 30 students. So my assumption is that it all kind of works out about the same. But anyway, so congratulations to those kids, and glad that they can represent us. some very interesting choices of what to write about. I mean, it was from milk to important people that had inspired us, and I mean, it was really creative, very creative. The other thing is I wanted to highlight that we had a $2,800 gift in memory of Jack Worley for Sunnyside to purchase Chromebooks, and that's really unbelievably wonderful, and so a lot of kids will get a lot of use out of that. Then he had a question, and I know we did this early on about the handbooks at the high school. I know they were trying to get a committee going, just wondered what the status was on that, or...
Yep, he put out many requests for people to volunteer for the committee, and not very many people volunteered. He did hit his time hacks, so that will be ready to go a lot sooner than it was last year.
Okay.
We did have some input on things like hats and those type of things. I have walked the building, and I keep a rough count of the number of kids that would have on a hat, and so far I've only had one. And when I stopped her and asked her about her hat, she explained how it went with her outfit and how she bought the hat to match her slacks, and it was, yeah, it was more than I wanted to know. But I've also, my wife is subbing, so I've asked her to watch for hats as she goes about the district, because she's all over the district. And she reports that there are some hats, but not very many hats.
So will we have that handbook come to us then earlier?
At the same time that's outlined in, usually what you do is you go off of a yearly, it should be here on this time. And Mr. Reese, you've probably been involved in a little bit of this.
A little bit, yep.
You want to use the mic so people at home can hear you?
Well, I just know that we really had a problem with it last year, and I just wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time to look at it this year.
Yep. Yep, because, and I've spoken to Dave several times, he's reached out to people,
Great.
and it is moving forward.
Great.
Yeah, we had a meeting, and I think there were 2 parents, but I think both of them were employees in the district.
And, but he sent out like 40 invitations.
Yeah.
There were some robocalls, there was emails, there were paper letters.
I understand, and I knew that was a problem, so that's why I was asking
And
too.
the thing that we wanted was get a good cross-section of our population, and that was clearly not what we got.
Yeah.
So we wanted to hear voices from, from all of our
Right.
demographics, and they weren't present.
Okay.
Which, remember, well, we Twittered, we Facebooked, we web-paged, we newspapered, we radio, we did TV, and still 99% of the people didn't show up for right-sizing stuff. The numbers were very, very low. So this is another...
Have you polled students at all, like your student council or some of those areas as to...
Not formally that I know of, but we
I just
talk to
wondered,
kids all
is
the
that
time.
even a viable thing to do?
It is, and I can probably speak to that better than you can.
Sure.
I personally had 2 students ask me to be placed on a committee with Mr. Kane. I shared their names with him. He said he'd have them on the committee. So there are students that want to be actively involved in this process.
Great.
But again, 2, out of 4,000.
I know, yeah.
Well, not 4,000, it'd be 1,000 in high school.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to bring it up and kind of see where we were. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Deb. Dean?
I'd like to commend one of our staff members for an op-ed that was written last week in the newspaper. I thought it was well-written, explained some things. Hopefully a number of people read it. Hopefully they get their newspaper. We battled to get ours. But half the time you don't get a newspaper anymore, so I wonder what's going on. Okay, finally got them 4 days in a row, which is a record for a while.
Wow.
They just don't know which door to throw them at. Sometimes we get them on one straight side, and sometimes we get them on the other side. But at least we're getting one now. But it was well written, and I wanted to get away from that and just thank. And I think it was one of either our English or our social science
It was Ryan Osborne.
instructors that wrote it.
Yeah.
And I was very appreciative of what he wrote.
It's very well written. Thank you, Dean. Arliss?
I agree that was a very well-written ad, and wish to thank him and then a lot of our other staff who do a lot of things for to show the positive nature of Burlington School District. Things coming up, I know Thursday night is Festival of Bands already, I believe. Thursday night, 7 o'clock. come celebrate my birthday with me at the Festival of Bands. And then the spring play is coming up the end of April. BHS is moving forward with that, April 26th and 27th.
And dovetailing on that, then the string playing is the next Thursday night.
Yes.
And then the vocal choirs, All City, is the next Thursday night.
Okay.
So 3 Thursday nights in a row down at the auditorium in March.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Thank you. Heather?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Mr. Kendall?
Pat, you continue to impress me with your willingness to take on, I shouldn't say it that way, to address concerns with the legislature. I wasn't expecting to see this email that you have here, or letter that you have, concerning Senate File 547, and I think that's an outstanding letter. I would encourage everybody to send it on to their respective legislatures. The voucher program is not a good idea. The savings account idea is very troubling, and I appreciate you, and you call it out, and you really say it. Could be a threat to public education as we know it. So I appreciate that.
Yep. May I say something real quick?
Sure.
Well, to your point, while we're sitting here, Representative Kerr pops up, and he's already spoken to the head of the House Education Committee, Cecil Dolchek, and they don't think there's enough votes for it to go. They don't think it's going anywhere, is what they've just sent me. So if they're accurate, it's working. So thank you.
That would be good. But I appreciate your willingness to address issues like that. At the risk of opening a can here, I do want to say something regarding the nurses situation. I know that created a great deal of anxiety in the community, and a lot of people were frustrated about it, talking about it. I think there was some degree of misinformation out there about it, and I again appreciate Mr. Coney putting out the facts to that issue and what they actually were. And I agree. I still support and believe that our board made the right choices, and we care very, very much about the health and safety of all of our students. So, and I believe that issue has calmed down some. I think there's maybe some understanding on the part of the people that were here that evening and so forth. I think they can kind of better understand where we were and where things are at. So it's all about communicating, and I appreciate the ability that they can communicate, we can communicate, and try to get everybody to a central ground, because if we're attacking each other, nobody's going to win. So I appreciate a little bit of harmony there.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. We are embarked in the third trimester.
Yep.
And so I'm appreciative of all the staff, certified staff, all the staff for what they do each and every day to educate our kids, keep them safe, get them where they're supposed to be, get them back. Everything that has to be done, and there's so many different things going on. It's really amazing to see it. So I'm really thankful for our staff, and I appreciate the board working together as well. And we always seem to always have something new to deal with, and we always learn some new things, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate your patience with me when my work actually takes me away from the board table a little bit here and there, and like tonight, I couldn't foresee that last week. But anyway, appreciate your patience on that. So with that,
one more thing. Go for it. I try not to do this, but Pat, I forgot. I feel like I've been. Can I praise you some more? No, in all seriousness, I appreciate your willingness to do the My Community Listens class this week. Devoting 3 days of your time is a tremendous commitment for growth on your part, and recognize the growth potential for the district and the people that you lead. So
that's right.
True. I have been through the class, and I know what you're going to do, and I am extremely appreciative that you're willing to do that. And I think it will be very good, and I'll be anxious to hear. We all will what comes out of it for you. So thank you for doing that.
Yep, you're welcome. But in all fairness, Lacey Johnson met with the nurses and did all that work. I just stood back and smiled. And Corey has already assumed command. He's ready to run with everything. And Corey, Lacey, and Greg and the administrators are enabling me to be able to go to that class for 3 days.
And I would encourage you to send other folks for other sessions.
That's one of the determinations that I'm making.
Could I ask one question? We brought up the trimesters. Will there be a post-mortem at the end of the year? What worked in the trimesters? What didn't work? What we could improve on? over this year?
Yeah, we always use our growth model, and at the end of the year, we go through, and when you look at it, we talk about what went well, the planning, the implementation, the evaluation, the assessment, and then the educational adaptation, the changes. So we're trying to move away from being brick and mortar. We're moving more to an organism, a living, breathing, developing, evolving organism.
And more things worked than didn't work, but there were still some things in there that caused a little confusion and some frustration on the part of some people.
Yep.
Well, and to touch on that, we've had a tremendous struggle with snow days. And we adjusted the schedule, and we're doing some innovative things. So thank you again. Let's praise Pat Cohen again. Well, and the whole staff for making it work, because it's what it takes. And especially the BEA and everyone that's in that group as well.
Right. Well,
Absolutely.
Liz particularly showed up, was at the early meetings, was right there with us. So
Thank you, Liz. With that, do we need a motion to go into our exempt session?
So moved.
Just to close the meeting? Okay, so we have a motion to close the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is closed.
Adjourned.
Adjourned.